right. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Nick Biasini. I'm head of outreach for Cisco Talos. Since it's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we wanted to take some time today and talk about one of the biggest challenges we're facing. Honestly, it's talent. There is a huge amount of jobs that are available and not a lot of people available to take them. So today I have a panel with some of my colleagues from Talos. We're going to spend some time talking about who we are, what our background is, how we found our way to Talos, and give some tips on career advice on how you can either start on a path to be in cybersecurity, or maybe you're already partway through your career and are ready for a change and want to jump into cybersecurity. With that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce the folks we have out here today and kind of go around and have them talk a bit about who they are, where they're located, how long they've been at Cisco, and maybe some tidbits about their educational and work backgrounds. First up, let's go with Ashley Benj.
Hi, my name is Ashley Benj. I lead strategic intelligence for Talos's strategic planning and communications group. So what that means is I basically work to strategize how we can best use the data that we have to make sure that we're sort of effectively meeting business needs, but also needs within our own organization as well to serve research purposes. I actually didn't start in cybersecurity. My academic background is in computational astrophysics. So I made a hard 180 after I realized I didn't want to be in school forever and found myself sort of in cybersecurity by accident. I am based in Baltimore, Maryland, and I've actually left Cisco and returned. So I think in total, I've been with Cisco for about 6 or 7 years now.
Okay, cool. All right, Josh, let's go to you next.
So I'm a senior security researcher at Talos, and I'm based in Portland, Oregon. And I've been with Cisco for about 7 years. I left for 7 months and just came back, so I'm back for 2 months. I have a long background leading me to this path, not really educational. I ended up working my way up from sysadmin to consultant to working at various places like NASA and Mandiant doing incident response, and until I got to where I am now.
Oh, that's a cool path. Yeah. All right, and next up, Gergana.
Hi everyone, my name is Gergana Karajova and I'm incident response consultant with Cisco Talos. I'm based in Switzerland and I actually have a very long path into cybersecurity, but I'm super happy I'm here. I started originally in liberal arts in languages, but after doing a college job as a technician, just like college support, I developed an interest in IT. And actually, soon after college, I decided I want to go full in, and I went for a second bachelor's degree, and little by little, here I am. What I do now at Talos is actually really cool. I help clients with 2 things. Well, they're either really happy to work with me or they're very stressed to work with me. The case when they're really stressed is when they call us for an emergency, when they have an active incident in their environment, and just my team is helping the client get the compromise under control. When they're happy to work with us is when we do something fun, proactive to strengthen their security. Could be writing a playbook, doing tabletop exercise, doing a training, all those things that actually prepare you for the time when an incident would come.
Very cool. As for myself, I'm Nick Biasini. I'm head of outreach for Cisco Talos. I've been at Talos now for 8 years. As far as my journey, I actually started as a business major, hated it, dropped out of college, ended up going back and ending up doing random like IT support work. Managed to get into a security class that was entirely taught in Snort, oddly, and network security based. And I kind of fell in love with security. And here I am 15 years later, still doing things and fun things. All right, so kind of have an idea of who these folks are. Let's kind of walk through some of the career advice they have. And we've already seen there's a wide array of ways to come into security. I mean, basically none of us started on the path of security, yet all 4 of us ended up in security one way or the other. So let's start talking about that. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's looking to start a career or maybe make a career change into cybersecurity?
Well, I can go first because
yeah, please.
Well, my biggest advice would be to not be afraid to change and to actually not hold yourself back, even if you think, well, I'm way into my career, I would need years in order to build up skills, in order to transition. Always try to put it in a perspective. So with approximately 75 or 80 years of life expectancy that we have, well, all of us would probably work up until we are 65. So even if you're 35, 45, you still have really a big chunk of your lifetime to spend working. So any investment that you do is going to have many years to pay off. So I talk quite often with people who are in my age and their early 30s and who are not really happy with their career, but they're really scared of the idea of going for another degree or changing careers. And I always say, well, you're actually going to work 3 times more in the years to come, the duration. So it's maybe worth it.
That's a really, really good point. For me, probably the biggest thing is don't be overwhelmed and realize that cybersecurity is an incredibly, incredibly broad field. There are lots of ways that you can apply the skills that you already have in cybersecurity. Don't think it's all malware reverse engineering and things like that. There's lots of space for lots of different talent out there.
I would really agree with that. And I think it's also okay to sort of be exploratory in your career in security. I started my career working in detection and response, writing a lot of snort rules, actually. So it's funny you mentioned that, Nick. I really liked it, and I really loved how much exposure it gave me to different topics within security. But what I realized is that I also really like to sort of work with people and speak about the cool technical work that's being done at Talos. And so in doing that, I've actually shifted my career to do more of the communications type work, which I never would have guessed. I've always thought of myself as being a pretty introverted person, but here I am. So I think it's okay not to know specifically what you like about security and to kind of adjust your choices and explore new things accordingly.
I can say from experience, as someone who is incredibly introverted, but now does tons of public speaking, you never know where you're going to end up in your career. Josh, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Actually, I'm pretty introverted, and I realized one of the best ways for me to learn more and to become more advanced in my field of interest is to speak at conferences. So I've spoken at probably 50 or 60 conferences. I feel like now it's crazy. The first one being DEF CON, and I was in front of over 1,000 people talking about something, and I'm like, am I even qualified for this? But you are qualified. Like you can learn anything and teach anything. And then we have so many resources now too. We have YouTube, people are teaching on YouTube. We have so many books. I mean, cybersecurity is a really big industry, whereas a long time ago, if you wanted to break into it, you had to get into it in a different way. So.
Completely agree. And for those of you wondering, imposter syndrome is real. We all deal with it at some point or another. Just have confidence in yourself. So moving on a bit from that, talk a little bit about what you guys think are critical skills that are necessary to succeed in your cybersecurity careers.
Yeah, I'll start. I really think curiosity is very important, and an open mind tied together with that. Try not to shut down ideas, just explore. It's an artistic pursuit, in my opinion. I know it's scientific, but it feels artistic to me. Stay humble, always willing to learn. I mean, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and every day I struggle still. So I'm always learning things, and I'll be learning until I'm done. So.
Completely agree. Just to follow on a little bit, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. You learn from those mistakes. That's the best way for you to learn. Fail. Don't be afraid to fail.
And also to add something which goes a bit along the lines of taking on challenges, speaking at conferences which are maybe way out of your league, based on your opinion, setting deadlines or setting a high bar for you to jump is what really helps you grow in the long run. And also being gentle with yourself, not expecting that from day one you're going to be really familiar with everything. No one is. And I often get surprised, some of the people that I really look up to in my team, when they tell me that they themselves have imposter syndrome in customer engagements at conferences, and I'm like, but wow, you're the master, you're the guru.
Thing you run into, and honestly, don't be afraid. Like, I applied to the job that I got because I thought it sounded really cool, and I thought I had absolutely no chance of ever even scoring an interview. Yet here I am 8 years later, loving my job and still doing it. All right. So kind of continuing on that path, what advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back? Mine would be don't be afraid, but it's not super useful.
I think for myself, like I mentioned earlier, I think something that many young people also struggle with, or even people that are midway in career and don't know if what they're doing is what they want to keep doing forever. It's okay not to know what you want to do, and it's okay to not even have a plan. I think it's really important to, as has been mentioned previously, just to try. You only hurt yourself and box yourself into a corner if you don't even bother applying to the job that sounds really cool, but like it might be out of reach. And the worst thing that can happen is that maybe you interview and realize it's not for you, or maybe it ends up being the job of your dreams. So even if you don't necessarily have a concrete plan or feel like you're not the most qualified, you never know. So all you can really do is try.
Actually, I have a really good example of doing exactly that. I was working as a consultant, and I saw this job on actually Craigslist of all places. It looked really interesting. It looked like a government job. Didn't say where it was. I applied to it, and I was like, "There's no way I can get this," but I did it anyways. And it was this job at NASA to become one of their first analysts in their new SOC. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you never know. And I will say, one of the hardest things, especially if you're right out of college and you got that first job, is leaving that first job. Don't be afraid to leave that first job. That is probably one of the hardest hurdles that people have to get over, is the willingness to say goodbye to the first place that you started. It's not always going to be better at the second place, but it's part of the journey to get you where you need to be.
If I can add something, for me, probably the advice I would give to my younger self is to invest even more from my own resources, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's energy, into my goals. Because as we progress in our career, our ability to invest in training or our ability to invest time into career development changes. But I've always tried to have, let's say, 10%, let's say, of what you earn invested in things which are important for me future-wise. And now looking back, I think I could have saved on some shoe pairs and invested even more, because that would have paid off much better.
It's a very, very good point. Always invest in yourself. It's always a good investment. So to kind of, go ahead.
I was going to say, my advice to my younger self would be, don't put others on a pedestal because they're achieving something you don't think you can do. Like, you're capable of doing anything and doing it well if you work at it.
That's a great place to leave it. So kind of continuing on that path, what about non-technical skills? What, in your opinion, is the best non-technical skill for cybersecurity careers?
I have a pretty strong opinion about this one, and maybe I'm biased because I work on our communications team, but I really do think that being able to communicate, especially to a diverse range of people, from very technical engineers to maybe people that have no idea what you're talking about, have never seen any lines of code, don't know anything about the technical side, and are more on a business side, being able to speak to what you do, or just generally work-related topics in a sort of easily understood way, is really, really important. And that will really serve you well, not only in cybersecurity, but in many different jobs. I also think it's a tough skill to develop. So it really does take a lot of work.
I couldn't agree more. I can't even begin to tell you, if you can take very technical topics and communicate them in non-technical ways to both technical and non-technical people, you will go very, very far. Regardless of what career you're in, you will go very far if you can do just that.
And to build upon the communication skills, I would actually add, in general, collaboration skills. In the IR team, we say it's the ultimate team sport, because you would always be working very, very closely with colleagues on an incident. So even if it's on a proactive service where it is less tension and more relaxed timeline, I really think that being able to work with any type of person, because you never know what type of people you would end up on a project with, and everybody has their strengths and weaknesses just like ourselves. So being able to put together a plan which makes use of everybody's strengths, really, this is really important for success and also the mental well-being of the whole team, I would say.
Completely agree. I would say too, be humble. Realize that no matter how good you think you are, there's always going to be people that are going to be slightly better. Don't think that you're necessarily the greatest thing because of what you do. Yes, you work in cybersecurity, but there's no reason to think too highly of yourself.
Yeah, I also agree with the collaboration and communication as the most important, and also it's a very difficult skill, but it's a very useful skill. And then I would add on being able to adapt, like learning how to adapt to changing situations on a whim, and just staying curious.
Yeah, those are all great points. The only constant is change. Realize that. The earlier you realize that, the better off you'll be. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about kind of more about our day-to-day lives inside of Talos. We all have a pretty diverse skill set and our roles are pretty different. So let's kind of talk a little bit about what you enjoy most about your role at Talos, or maybe talk a little bit about what that role entails if you haven't already. Josh, you want to kick us off with this one?
Sorry. Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. So I left, for 7 months after 7 years, and I was doing really interesting work with domains and DNS. And now I'm back and I'm still working on that, but I'm exploring some new areas. So right now I'm enjoying learning, working with like large data sets, trying to find bad stuff happening.
That's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Ashley, how about yourself?
Yeah, I guess related to big data sets. A lot of my work, well, I work in a very cross-functional role, so I sort of split my time, and I would say maybe half of my time is spent building pipelines for data sets and also taking sort of a look at the data flowing through those pipelines to make sure that the finished data set that's being used by other teams is useful and is high quality, and so that sort of engineering type of work is about half my time. The other half of my time is spent working with other teams, trying to figure out, what our projects we can take on to do that kind of work, assuring, high quality data is there and making sure that we're sort of using that data to speak in a way that makes sense and to tell a story about Talos. I also do a lot of what I would call more like outreach type work to talk about Talos with other organizations in Cisco. So that's, again, where those good communication skills that you're always trying to work on in this industry come into play. But it's a pretty good balance for me of being able to do the engineering and more technical work that I really enjoy, but also getting to do that sort of cross collaboration and communications type work that I've also found a passion for.
Cool. Gergana, how about yourself?
Well, in my role, I kind of have two modus operandi. On the one hand is the emergency response. This is the time that I'm on call, and together with the team on call, we respond to clients that call us and need our support urgently. So this, as you can imagine, is fast-paced. It's quite stressful, and the days are quite long. But it's great because we are really acting as a team, and there is something really gratifying in being able to support the customers in such a moment when there is really chaos and things are falling apart for them. And on the other hand, so when I'm off call, I'll be working on proactive projects. And there I firstly enjoy the more plannable day that I would have, but also that's a place to bring in creativity. I know when we talk about technical roles, we don't always think about creativity as a main component of it, but actually there is a lot of it in designing the different exercises, even if you're designing a compromise assessment plan, you can bring in creativity. So I also really, really enjoy this part, and that's where I get to spend more time with my colleagues, like brainstorming together.
Very cool. As for myself, me and my team kind of have an interesting place because a lot of our research is public, basically all of it. So the thing that I like most about the role is coming from a previous enterprise background. I could affect change inside of an enterprise potentially, but now me and my team are able to affect change literally at a global scale and really be able to make a difference in cybersecurity, not just inside of our one particular organization, but for everyone everywhere. And that's just a cool part about what we do. So kind of pivoting a little bit, let's talk a little bit about what you enjoy most about working at Talos specifically. So for this one, let's kick it off with Gergana this time.
I definitely love the autonomy we have. So we are a fully remote team, which means that we have people really all around the globe. So I work with all time zones, and in a way, I'm the master of my day. Having this trust from the leadership and having this freedom, I find it really empowering. This only works if people bring in real sense of responsibility and integrity to their work. And knowing that this is the fact with our team, I feel it's kind of a blessing to be part of a team that acts like that.
Yeah, it's a really great part of Talos. Josh, how about you?
I just feel like it's such a huge, a global group, a diverse group of people spread out all over the world, just working to make the entire world more secure. It's something I want to be a part of for a long time. Anyways, it's the largest security group doing the most effective work, in my opinion, and it's just awesome.
Agreed. Ashley, how about you?
I think I would also have to say the people. It's such a good group of people from all sorts of different backgrounds, and to be able to work with that kind of group is really rewarding. I think it's not something you often get in deeply technical organizations, and we have people with backgrounds of all kinds, which just gives them really interesting and diverse viewpoints. So it's always good to have coworkers that you can learn from.
Yeah, agreed. And for me, it's the people, but in a slightly different way. This is without a doubt the most technical organization I've ever been part of, all the way from the analysts up through into VPs. Everyone in this organization has a technical background of some sort. There is just technical knowledge from top to bottom, and people always willing to help each other, help solve difficult problems, figure out ways to make things work. It's a great organization to be part of. So speaking of that, are there any cool projects or things that you're working on that you can kind of talk about to highlight the works that your organizations or groups do inside of Talos? For this one, let's start with Gergana this time.
Well, I've been involved actually more in a supporting role into a few open source projects that one of our senior colleagues is working on. He's developing kind of already out of the box environment that could be used in order to test different incidents and or in order to test like the response that would be taken, because we as incident responders are always interested in the artifacts that are left by an attack. So sometimes, well, we need to simulate the attack in order to find the artifacts we are interested in. And I really enjoy the supporting role, getting to test some of the more advanced work done by my colleagues. And this is actually something that contributes to the bigger cyber community. And we have one specific use case of it, but I'm sure that after it's released public, there will be many more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that highlights another thing that's a big part of Talos, which we have a huge commitment to open source. We contribute and work on open source a lot. I mean, we've joked multiple times about Snort being important in our career journey, but for those of you that don't know, Snort was originally owned by SourceFire, is now part of Cisco Talos. That's why it's kind of funny that we all ended up here. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, maybe a wild card project to talk about, but I am actually currently back in school getting an MBA, and as part of that, have taken quite a lot of marketing coursework, which is never something I would have seen myself doing as an astrophysicist, but here I am. And as part of this marketing project, which is within Talos, we've been able to really kind of look at the way we talk about the organization in a unique way that I don't think any other marketing team is doing, because we have such deeply technical marketing folks on that team. And so it's been a really interesting project to be a part of. I think it's really unique to sort of be able to be involved in that creative process with people that are able to sort of speak that business language of marketing and that creativity side of marketing, but also get to have that sort of deep technical understanding of what it is we do at Talos. So it's a very unique position to be in this organization, to be involved with that group.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, how about you?
So I'm working on, I'm speaking at a conference in Vienna in about a month, and I'm doing a topic based on finding malicious traffic, trying to build signatures to find malicious traffic in network traffic based on the timing in between the transactions. So that's what I'm working on, and I think it's pretty cool. And I don't know if I'll make it in time, but I'm going to make it. I have to. Just make the slides on the airplane. Actually, one time I spoke at a conference and I was programming up to the moment I walked on stage, and then it worked. And I was like, oh, thank you.
In true Talos manners, working on it to the last possible
second. Yeah, I'm trying to give myself a deadline of October 30th instead of the conference. I'm hoping that works. We'll see.
Good luck with that. Let me know how it works out.
All right.
As far for the stuff that me and my team are doing, we're always working on cool stuff. I just unfortunately can't really talk about any of it at the time. So yes, we're working on cool stuff. Always working on cool stuff. You'll know because it'll be talked about publicly. At kind of a shift on that, can you share a moment when you were proud of the work that you do? For this one, let's start with Ashley.
Yeah, I think one of the best parts about working for an organization like Talos is that much of the work that we do very directly impacts humanity. I think that when you see big global events, the war in Ukraine, different public events where critical infrastructure is targeted, the ransomware attacks that have happened on a very large scale over the last maybe 5 or so years, those are all things that are happening in the world that in cybersecurity we're able to just sort of help solve. And even on a smaller scale, being able to help protect maybe a grandmother or someone who's being targeted by a phishing attack, that's a very fulfilling and worthwhile cause to spend some of your time on. And so something that I find fulfillment, this isn't a specific event, but just generally being able to sort of be in that helping role and try, even if I'm just one ant, at least I'm in a group of a lot of ants trying to sort of help the anthill do a little bit better. And so being able to put my energy towards that sort of betterment and protection of very important things like that is really cool for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gergana, how about you?
I really share Ashley's take on our role. I often say that cybersecurity is plus humanity work, actually. We contribute to a better world. And you can find many examples. So it can be something big that I'm proud of. For example, Talos' involvement in supporting Ukraine in the current situation. But it can also be just one specific incident that we worked on, and we were able with our work to, let's say, prevent the further infection of the environment of the customer and thus speed up the recovery. Because at the end of the day, it is whether a factory is out of work for 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Of course, it has an effect on the bottom line, but more importantly, it has an effect on the employees, because those are livelihoods behind each company. So I really take pleasure in having a conversation with a client where they get to see what was the value added by our support, and they're usually they're grateful for our support, and it works out. Yes, so that's very motivating.
Absolutely, it's good stuff. Josh, how about you?
I mirror the same sentiments. I mirror the same sentiments. That I'm pretty much proud of my work. Anything I'm doing, from the tedium of like looking at log files to brute forcing my way through some Python code, trying to figure it out. Like it's all going towards this goal of protecting the world, which is amazing. If I'm going to pick a specific moment, I mean, it's really hard to do, but one time I helped with some government investigation. I got a really cool challenge coin from the security group in that organization. So that was cool.
And that's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I would kind of echo all of that. The stuff that we did in Ukraine was incredible. Watching that and the effort that we put in across the board was quite incredible. For a specific example, randomly I wrote a blog on an Apache Struts vulnerability when it came out. It ended up being quoted and used in a congressional report, which was kind of cool because that vulnerability ended up being involved in an Equifax breach. So that's just a really interesting, weird way that our work makes a difference that I wasn't at all expecting. So kind of a follow-on to that, and we've talked about this a couple of times already, but how do you feel like you're making a difference in the world or having a direct impact on the cybersecurity community in your role at Talos? Let's start with Josh for this one.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, some of this has already been stated, but I'm part of such a huge group with the same mission. I'm helping improve the security of everyone. So we work to stop things like ransomware and other bad stuff happening to companies and individuals. So I don't know. That's how I feel like we're making a difference to the world. And then speaking at conferences and just doing outreach to organizations just is really powerful.
Nick, I'm not sure, but did you hand over the mic to me?
Yes, sorry.
I would say that for me, my way of paying back to the community is by getting involved in a lot of women in cybersecurity activities. So I went to an all-women's college, and I really believe that there is a huge potential there that untapped up until now to excite more women to enter the field, to take an interest, and it needs to happen really one girl at a time. So I firstly talk a lot about how cool it is to work in cybersecurity, and secondly, I try to find through the different organizations that exist in my region ways to support like a larger scale effort on this.
Absolutely, that's very important. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, similarly, I think that because Talos has such a background in strong open source commitment, we post a lot of our research very publicly, and I think that gives us a platform to be able to talk about really critically important issues. And so, I don't do a lot of blog-worthy research at this point, but recently got to write a blog about the way that data privacy is changing with new legislation. And that's something that's really important to me. And so to be able to speak publicly about that on a blog that has a readership like Talos blog, it is really cool. And I also think that being able to do outreach in some of the initiatives that Talos supports to help get more diverse people groups into cybersecurity is really awesome. So being part of an organization like this that really has a commitment to those sorts of things is really cool.
That's awesome. And for me, like a lot of what we do is publish blogs. The way that I always enjoy when people come up and say, thank you so much for publishing blog on whatever malware family. I was able to use it to help me learn or to help mitigate an incident in our environment. That type of stuff always resonates and makes a huge difference. Shows that what we're doing isn't just going into an abyss, but it actually is being used and helpful to the community more broadly. Now, we talked a little bit about diversification, but can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on the diversifying cybersecurity generally and what your experiences have been specifically inside of Talos as well? Let's start with Ashley this time.
Sure. So I think that when you have a more diverse group of people that you work with, it helps to bring more points of view to the table, and usually means that the work you're able to do is better because you have more creativity, more input from different backgrounds. And so I think that over the years, my experience in cybersecurity has been that there's been a really positive improvement overall in the industry. I don't have statistics off the top of my head, but I can see that the sort of sentiment in the industry is changing. There's more groups of people that were previously underrepresented that I see more often at conferences. That's not to say that we can't still improve. I think that it will continue to be sort of a climb to get to where the industry needs to be. But overall, I think that the issue is being recognized by people that have the power to make changes in the industry, and that it's definitely seen as something of importance. And so my experience working with Talos has been very positive, where we have diverse backgrounds that are represented. I'm not from any sort of computer science or cybersecurity background. I'm certainly not the only one. It's not that weird. If you're someone who has a non-technical background, there are dozens of us. But even in other underrepresented groups as well, I see that the industry overall is really making a positive change.
Yes, absolutely. And just to drive that point home, like I have people on my team that used to work on oil rigs in the Pacific, and now they do amazing reverse engineer and malware analysis. So you never know what path you'll be on. Gergana, how about you?
I would agree with Ashley that we see a positive trend. So in the incident response team, we have definitely a very diverse team in terms of backgrounds and also in terms of origin. Like we have people from the whole world, and this by default brings in a different perspective. And I think the leadership does very good job in actually fostering an environment where everyone feels welcomed and free to express their opinion. Where I think we as Taos can do even more is maybe supporting even more people from diverse background, which doesn't necessarily mean only men and women, but it could be people of different age, for example, to be entering, because we have quite a young team. But other than this, we're doing a really awesome job.
Completely agree. Josh, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been watching it since the industry, when I started, was pretty much a really male dominated, kind of like a monoculture almost. And just watching it through the years, it's grown to include people from all diverse backgrounds, from different groups, different minority groups. More women are involved, and then also just more educational and work backgrounds. It's creating a much more diverse and useful group of people to work with. It's just wonderful, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. The one area I would say that also is ripe for additional help is younger people, right? If we can get technology and these types of careers in front of people as they're younger, it helps drive them and put them on a path to be able to be in this career as they age and as they kind of learn more and more.
I think it's helped quite a bit that it's been cybersecurity is so public and so known, and it's seen as a lucrative path to go down. It's also an interesting path to go down. It's thanks in part to, unfortunately, the news cycle, which talks about all the bad incidents that happened, but it's thanks to that. And then community college offers courses in ethical hacking, things like that. So making it more affordable is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started in cybersecurity, it was like a niche of a niche career, and now it's just a dominant field. It's kind of been interesting to watch. So, Guriana, you're based in Europe. Can you speak a little bit to the educational resources that are available to there, and then I'll branch out to the U.S. for the rest of y'all. But starting with Gurgana.
Definitely. Well, Europe, continental Europe at least, used to be quite conservative in its view on IT professionals and hence cybersecurity ones. So up until 10 years ago, you really, really needed a degree in IT if you want to work in IT. And this was really a big limitation on the talent pool that the companies were having. And for a long time, actually, the degrees that were offered in the standard universities were quite theoretical or not enough hands-on, let me put it that way. So this is changing. Now we can see that the type of technical education that is available is firstly going even at the pre-university level, at the vocational schools, and also the type of university degrees that are being offered, they're getting more of hands-on components, and actually the people who study them get skills which would be very easily transferable in their job after they leave college. I would say that in Europe we have kind of a prejudice against people who are switching careers from something non-technical related to technical. I still see job postings for people in cybersecurity which require a master's program. to be completed, which limits unnecessary the pool. At the end of the day, the question is, do you bring the skills which are necessary for the job, and are you bringing the willingness to actually learn what is needed for the job? And this is not unless this question is answered by the recruiters very early on, you never get to talk with very good applicants. So I see this changing a little by little, but in that sense, I think the US is doing a bit better job.
Yeah, that's fair. Josh, you mentioned community colleges in the U.S. and their offerings. Do you have any other things that you would throw out there for good educational resources?
Yeah, I mean, their education can be expensive. Like when there weren't cybersecurity courses really when I was initially going to community college right after high school. But there are so many resources now. Like, I mean, there's YouTube if you want to just do that. I had to self-teach myself and get training on the job. In many cases, most of the jobs I've applied for required a degree, and I never actually got a degree. So just a side note that doesn't always matter. It's based on your outlook and your opinion on how you handle your work, or how you work in this field, or where your curiosity leads you. But I would say there's so many great resources, like Community College of San Francisco, I think, was doing the very first ethical hacking courses, and now it's all over the place, I believe, and other places all over the US. And then you've got conferences you can watch, you can read blog posts. Everyone is sharing information, so you don't always have to take a formal path to get there, to get a degree. You could work your way up.
Absolutely. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, I think that being able to sort of teach yourself a little bit about what it is that you might see in a cybersecurity job posting is really useful. So as Josh mentioned, there's a lot of free online resources. YouTube's awesome, but there are also really great sort of games that you can play called Capture the Flag. So those might help you. If you're an active learner, you have to do something to learn it. Then those might help you sort of get to a place where you can learn the methodology of kind of working through a problem with having very limited information, which is a skill you're probably going to use quite a bit in the security world. I think that doing a lot of those Capture the Flag games when I was very early in career really helped to sort of learn that mindset. There's also, formal education, as has been mentioned, and that's also great, but don't let that be a limiter when you apply to these jobs. There are really a lot of organizations, Talos being one of them, that don't put a lot of stock on your sort of formal certificates or certifications or degrees.
Yeah, I would agree with the sentiment too, that gatekeeping is all too common in our industry with things like you have to have a master's degree or you have to have a bachelor's degree. Realize that those places, they aren't everywhere, still apply to jobs, even if you don't match all those things. And as the folks have said repeatedly, there are lots and lots of online resources out there, far more than there were before. So take advantage of them as you can. Look for those guides, those YouTube videos, those tutorials that are out there, and just get started and start digging and be curious. So kind of a final question to leave on before we get to the Q&A, just because I always enjoy the answers to this. What is your longest day that you've had working in security? Let's start with Josh this time.
Okay. I think probably about 30, it could even be 40 hours. And it's on my path to security, but it was more of a sysadmin related thing where I decided to upgrade an entire network to an Active Directory network overnight by myself. So that was a bad decision, but I did it. And I was really tired at the end.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I've had other days that were long too in incident response, but that was my own doing. It was all by myself. So that was... Oof.
Yeah, the self-inflicted ones are the ones that really get you.
Yeah.
Ashley, how about yourself?
Yeah, I have had some really long days, and some of them were my own doing, mistakes that I made that needed remedied. I will say, though, to buck the trend, that I have come to realize that I've got maybe 12 hours on a long day in me, and anything outside of that, even if it's so critical, I really try to find a way to call it a day and give myself a chance to rest, because if I don't, then usually I'm a zombie staring at a screen and not actually getting anything done. So even if it's just like a quick break, I go for a walk with my dogs and I come back. Being able to reset, I think, has really helped me from backing myself into that long 24-hour day corner.
Yeah, the wisdom of being in a career for a while, especially if you're in security, that is probably one of the most important lessons you will learn. Gergana, how about you?
One of the longest days I had was before Christmas last year, when Log4j showed up around the corner. We were all packing nicely presents, and there it was, ready to spoil our holidays. So I do remember that we had some instances that started in our afternoon, my afternoon European time, and they went on into the afternoon US time. So it was a very, very long day. But yeah, I also have probably a 16-hour cap, and then I'm just no good. I have no problem getting up at 5 a.m. the next morning, and I'll be ready to work at 5:30. But keeping me after midnight rarely brings much.
That is true. You got to learn your limits.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually had a 26-hour day. Oddly, I've also had a 10-hour support call, which was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. But yes, we all have long days. Josh, did you have something else to add there?
Oh, I was just gonna say, taking the wisdom of age helps, like just taking a little break. Like I figure out most of my problems when I'm sleeping or when I'm going for a walk or I'm doing something not related to the task at hand. So I was like 22 when I had my long day. So I'm older now and more responsible.
Yes, take those breaks. They're very, very important. Clear your head. You have no idea how good a 20-minute break can do you after staring at something for 6 hours to make you realize what your mistake was or what you've been banging your head against the wall about. All right, let me pivot over now and kind of see what type of questions we've had coming into the Q&A here. Give me just 1 second. So here's one. What are the thoughts on formal certifications? Is it important to get formal certifications before starting to apply for jobs? And if so, are there any in particular that you would call out?
I can start with answering this question. So I do believe certifications have value in two ways. The first one is that they give you actually a structure if you're new into the field and you actually don't know in this ocean of knowledge out there, what is it that you need to know? So getting studying for certification gives you an action plan. And this is great. We love action plans. The second thing a certification is good for is actually demonstrate to the managers, to the company that you're going to apply to, that you're serious about it. You have put effort and some resources into getting this certification. So you have skin in the game, so to say. I would say when most people think of certifications, they right away would think about the ones that are really, really expensive. But actually, there are quite a few ones which are entry level. For example, the CompTIA Security Plus one. I always recommend it to junior people who just are starting. It gives you a nice foundation of a little bit of everything you'd probably need to know as a security professional in general, and it's not that expensive. Even if you have to pay it off your own pocket, it is affordable. And also quite often you can find different kind of programs where if you take part in a specific program online and you do it diligently, at the end you get the certification for free. So I've always tried to find something like this.
Those are definitely good call outs. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I think that certifications on paper, they look great and they can be useful for finding candidates. Personally, I've taken certification courses more for the knowledge and the framework that it gives me, and I've even left off some on my resume because it's not the important part. The important part is that I assimilate the knowledge. In some cases, maybe it is important to have it, like an ethical hacking one or CISSP or something like that. Maybe if you're going down that track, and it's definitely useful for finding what you're interested in and what you want to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley, did you have anything to add?
I think I would agree with what both Josh and Gergana have said. Yeah, they really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, the one caveat I would say is sometimes certifications can be useful. For a long time, if you wanted to work in, say, the US government in security, there was like 27 different certifications you could get, or you could get the CISSP and it would satisfy all 27. So in certain circumstances, you do need those certifications to kind of get you in the door, but that is not an across the board thing and really depends organization to organization.
Also, one more point on that.
Yeah.
And also, like it gets you kind of in the pipeline of, so with the CISSP, if you take it, you get the certification, you have to maintain the certification by going to conferences or doing other things, taking other certifications. So it kind of keeps you in the know, basically. So it's useful in that regard. And also it ties you, if you're paying for it, to a responsibility to yourself to complete it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see here. There's another question here. Someone was deciding which specific field of cybersecurity they wanted to go into, and they were curious if, for you all, if you knew from the start where you wanted to be, or if it's been more of a journey to make into that role. So who I guess, Ashley, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah. So I am a serial job hopper within cybersecurity, and I have a good reason for it. The reason is because I got into security on accident and didn't really know at all what it was that I wanted to do. When I was in school, I don't think it was even on my radar. I didn't think that I wanted anything to do with computers. That was just never really something I had considered. And so I started in detection response, mostly because the interview was just so much fun that I decided I could do it as a job. And, that was awesome. I really, really loved that work. And then I mentioned I sort of found that enjoyment of communications work and moved on to actually the outreach team with Nick for a time. That again was awesome. I got into sort of the threat hunting side of security, which is not something I had really had much exposure to previously. I found that I really enjoyed that. I went and joined a hunting team. I have also worked on a more product-oriented team that was developing actual security products. That this is external of Talos, but still sort of tangentially related to cybersecurity. And then in doing all of this over a course of many years, realized what I really wanted to do, which is what I'm doing now. But had I not sort of made those exploratory jumps, I don't think I would have had the awareness of what aspects of security I was most attracted to. So if you are a rare person who knows exactly what you want to do, by all means, go out and do it. That's awesome. Good for you. But it should not be frowned upon. And if you're at an organization that doesn't encourage growth by allowing you to make moves into different working groups, then I would really encourage you to think about whether that's an organization you want to put more time into, because in my opinion, any good supportive organization is going to allow you the room to explore your passions and to decide what it is that you like to do the most.
Absolutely. Gergana, Josh, you have anything else to add?
You go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe I can recommend to take it one step at a time, and you always have a good feeling. So once you're in a position where it feels right, and it's a combination of, does the work that I do feel satisfying, energizing to me, and do I like the people I work with, both internal as a team and on the customer side. So I've always approached the topic of finding the perfect position in that way. Give it a try, see how you feel about it, and if it doesn't feel right, okay, well, based on what it's not fitting, what could be another thing that you try. And as long as you're staying truthful to yourself and going for things that you're actually interested in, you're on a good path.
Awesome. Josh, do you have anything else?
I've always followed my instinct. Just kind of job hopped and role hopped until I found where I wanted to be. And I didn't really know all this time where I wanted to be. I know I was happy in certain places, but when I left Cisco, I left to be a principal product manager for another company. And that's a totally different job than doing research and looking at log files. I was mainly just talking to people. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to do it at this level. And then that's when I knew what I wanted to do. And that's when I came back to Cisco.
Yeah. And as for me, I started out in operations doing shift work. I was engineering. I've helped run anomaly detection systems, IDSs. And then I just kind of fell into really enjoying looking at malware and kind of started the detection team in my organization. And then it's just kind of went from there. So yeah, don't get discouraged. Again, security is an extremely broad field. If the first thing you look at isn't necessarily a good fit, don't give up. Keep looking for different things. We haven't talked at all about like certification and accreditation and policy work. There's lots of writing aspects to security that don't get talked about. Auditing. We live on a technical side, but there's a whole nother side of security that's out there for you. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and close it out. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with a few different viewpoints of what life is like in cybersecurity and at Talos. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month.